Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's premiere of our Save Wolf Lake uh, film. It's presented by the Friends at Temagami and the Save Wolf Lake Coalition. It was produced by Red Tent Media. I'll start off by mentioning that Wolf Lake is in the surrounding area is located on the Wanapate First Nation territory. It's approximately 50 kilometers northeast of Sudbury and still within the greater Sudbury area. A little bit about the Friends of Temagami. We are an all volunteer-based organization that works hard to promote, conserve, and protect areas throughout the Temagami region. The Save Wolf Lake Coalition is made up of the Friends of Temagami, the Sudbury Naturalists, the Coalition for a Livable Sudbury, many other individuals with much dedication to that coalition. This Save Wolf Lake film project started 9 years ago and speaks to the history of and area of Wolf Lake. Fran Brandt, Sarah Paul, and many others worked tirelessly on this film project. Tonight we'll see their efforts come to fruition. The intent of the film is to bring awareness and attention to the past, present, and future situation at Wolf Lake. And the film will be available online from tonight forward on the FOT YouTube page and in its original version upon request to FOT. And we would encourage that it be spread widely and used in classrooms and wherever it can be put to good use. Following the film premiere, we will have a panel discussion with Franco Mariotti and Peter Quimby, myself included. We will have a question period following that discussion, and those questions should come in the form of comments in whatever social media platform you are viewing this on. I'm not entirely too sure about Twitter and how those comments might appear. So if you're on Twitter, you might consider jumping on Facebook or on YouTube. There will be 2 short videos leading up to the film premiere. We would highly recommend that you put yourself into full screen mode once the film starts. I would like to mention and ask people to make note of the concept of time throughout the film and this evening's discussion. It is vital to the Wolf Lake and the conservation process. So without further ado, we'll get started. You'll have to bear with me as I get this stuff started.
Hello, I'm Jane Goodall. For most of my life, I've been learning about our closest living relative, the chimpanzee, in Gombe National Park in Tanzania. During those years, I've witnessed the forests around Gombe vanishing until only the trees within the park remained. Forests protect biodiversity, water and air quality, and help fight climate change by capturing and storing carbon dioxide. And yet, forests everywhere are disappearing. Less than 2% of old-growth red pine forest is left in North America. The largest of these old-growth forests are found at Wolf Lake, right within the city limits of Greater Sudbury. Some of these trees are 300 years old. Their rings hold the history of what this area was like even before Sudbury existed. They hold accurate records of a past climate that help us understand the impact of climate change today. I cannot stress enough how important it is for all of us to do what we can to protect this remaining old-growth forest for future generations.
Hello and welcome to the virtual premiere of the documentary Save Wolf Lake. I'm Sarah Paul.
And I'm Francisca Brand, members of Red Tent Media. And in partnership with Friends of Temagami, we made this short film.
In this film, you'll hear from many voices that have played an integral role in the fight to protect Wolf Lake, including scientists, ecologists, activists, artists, community members, and explorers. This film would not have been possible without their time, knowledge, and expertise, alongside many, many others who may not be seen in this film, but have generously supported and played a key role in the making of this film. For us, one of the most meaningful parts of the filmmaking process has been all of the incredible people that we've had the opportunity to spend time with. Fran and I are extremely grateful to each person that collaborated and opened their doors to us along the way. Thank you all, and thank you to everyone for watching.
The main theme that we tried to convey in this documentary is that of time. Back in 2012, Rob Nelson created a time-lapse video of Wolf Lake in hopes of creating more awareness for the space. Later on, he came back with Christoph Benfi, who is a talented videographer based out of Hamilton. Together, they shot some footage in hopes of creating a larger story. And that's when Sarah and I came in 2016. It is now 2021, so 9 years have passed since the beginning of this project. A lot of time has passed, and you might wonder, why is this still a relevant issue today, especially when there's so many pressing issues that require our advocacy and support. It's true. While the threats of Wolf Lake may not be the same as what they were in 2012, the long-term impact of development is still very much a possibility. For a time, the issue seemed dormant, but now over the last year, activity has increased on Wolf Lake again. Wolf Lake still isn't safe. Sometimes time can be the biggest threat to conservation. And it is the hope of this documentary for people to know about Wolf Lake, so that when the time comes, like now, we have the awareness and we have the support to save Wolf Lake.
We hope you enjoy and share this film.
Conservation is like holding a handful of sand. No matter how tightly you grip it, there are always grains slipping through between your fingers. It's hard to maintain a strong grip all the time. And if you don't top up the sand, eventually, over time, you will end up with nothing to protect.
As a kid growing up here, I always assumed that Sudbury looked like the moon. I couldn't imagine a forest on these black rocks. I grew up in this environment, this black moonscape, desolate landscape. But as I got older, I began to realize that the truth was that just 3 or 4 generations earlier, Sudbury did not look like this. All of this area used to be huge red and white pine old-growth forests. And you have to ask yourself, how can that happen? From such a rich natural environment to a moonscape, why weren't people demonstrating?
Sudbury began as a logging town and quickly evolved into a mining town after the discovery of copper and nickel. Early methods of smelting in the form of roast yards were used to extract the metals at this time. These roast yards were made by stacking wood in piles as high as you and I, the size of 5 football fields, then covered with ore and set on fire. Burning for up to 9 weeks, the sulfurous air would kill every bit of vegetation in its path, leaving behind a barren landscape that looked like the moon. All that vegetation couldn't grow back because whatever was left in the soil and dirt was full of heavy metals and acidity. Regreening began as an idea from a Laurentian University professor who wanted to see the red and white pine forest return to Sudbury the way it was for millennia. He came up with a method of spreading lime and dirt, which neutralized the pH levels and allowed the trees, red and white pine, birch and poplar, to grow again.
The regreening project here in Sudbury has been going on for 40 years and has changed the face of the landscape. And if you really want to know what Sudbury would have looked like 3 or 4 generations ago, that old growth red and white pine that used to be here, all one has to do is visit Wolf Lake, which is the largest remaining old growth red pine forest in all of North America. At one time, the old growth red and white pine forest stretched from the Maritimes all the way to the Great Lakes. Today, only 1.2% of that remains. And the largest part of that forest is here in the city of Greater Sudbury at a place called Wolf Lake.
As far as what it's like to be in an old growth forest, it's really quite surreal. It's difficult to explain it to somebody at the dinner table. Oh, they're just so big and it's so beautiful and it's damp and the moss is so thick and it's effervescent looking, and you can say all those things. But what you get standing at the base of an old growth tree is awe. And you can't, it's difficult to relate awe at the dinner table. You have to experience awe. You can't be shared awe or told about awe. You have to stand there and go, oh. There is no comparison. I couldn't intellectually articulate a comparison of a 10-year-old pine versus a 300-year-old pine. It's, you know, I might as well reverse that question around and say, well, tell me what the difference is between, you know, a 3-year-old and an 87-year-old man.
Imagine that these 300-year-old pine trees are like our grandfathers and grandmothers. Similar to our families, old-growth ecosystems require representation of all generations to be healthy and regenerate. The age of a tree can be determined by counting its rings, either by chopping the tree down, which is counterintuitive to our story, or you can take a core sample of the tree. In order to be considered old growth, red pine forests must feature trees at least 140 years or older.
"250 years is very old for Ontario trees in northern Ontario, because the fire cycle is somewhere around 70 to 80 years. That's that kind of period of time is when you'd expect to have a fire go through. And so a tree that's 250 years old or thereabouts has survived at least 3 fire cycles, possibly 4. The red pine is resistant to fire. It has a thick bark, and a ground fire will go through and wipe out lesser trees and other species, and yet the pine trees will survive that fire. We're standing here in the Temagami forest, in which there's red and white pine, but red pine is less frequent than white pine. Perhaps 30% of the Temagami forest is red pine, and the 70% is white pine, and that's more typical of Ontario. But in Wolf Lake, you have this very large area, a very consistent old-growth red pine almost entirely, which makes it perhaps the largest old-growth red pine stand in existence in the world. The ecosystem is rare. What old growth does is it creates a unique structure with dead standing snags and hollowed out trees and a whole physical landscape that only emerges and only exists after hundreds of years of the forest persisting.
Thousands of years of genetic heritage are embodied in these stands. Having survived under changing conditions, old-growth trees may contain genes that will enable them to survive global climate change, new diseases, and future uncertainties.
We have a record of responses of those trees to a time when climate was different. And so that's the type of information we can get from older trees that you can't get from younger trees. From younger trees that are maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years old, you won't have that longer record, which ecologists need to establish robust relationships with climate.
So they're quite different and quite rare. And quite frankly, because they were very attractive for lumber in their day, and still are, many of the old growth pine forests were cut and eliminated.
Why is it becoming rare? It shouldn't be rare.
And throughout the great forest comes the lumberman's cry of timber!
And there they go, shot through the air like torpedoes to make the world's greatest stockpile of logs for war.
Ships are loaded and pushed off for the Tribune paper mill at Thorold at the western end of Lake Ontario.
It became rare because we did not harvest sustainably. We did not harvest in responsible ways. I'm not saying we didn't have to harvest. We needed to harvest. We're standing and sitting in a house made of wood and drywall and brick and things like that. We definitely had to harvest, but we harvested in ways that were efficient for the truck driver, efficient for wherever the load had to go. So, cut.
In 1999, there was hope of things getting better. The Mike Harris government released Ontario's Living Legacy Land Use Strategy, with the intention of setting aside 12% of the industrial forest to be protected for ecological integrity.
Wolf Lake was clearly identified as one of those pieces that would be set aside and turned into a provincial park.
But there was a conflict. There were mining leases and claims on the land that predated the Living Legacy, preventing Wolf Lake from becoming part of the larger park. Instead, Wolf Lake was given Forest Reserve status, preventing forestry but allowing mining activity.
The biggest problem is when you have a mining claim, and if you make it active, you have no restrictions with respect to removing trees. So you could just clear the whole thing because you want to, and the timber would be gone. We'd like to secure it better into a provincial park.
The agreement was that as claims lapsed, they would become part of the surrounding Chinagucci Waterway Park. Despite this, in 2012, the MNR proposed to downgrade the Forest Reserve status to general use area, making it sound more appealing for mineral investment. A group of local businesses and organizations banded together to oppose this legislation.
When the coalition started out, we were in a bit of a sprint, and the provincial government at the time was proposing to revoke the forest reserve status of the area. We mobilized very quickly a lot of people and got that stopped, but then our sprint very quickly turned into a marathon.
While the coalition was fighting to protect the forest reserve status, the government allowed the Wolf Lake leases to be renewed for another 21 years. There's currently no legislation stopping them from making another renewal in the future. Who's going to remember to protect a forest in 2033? If it's still there, that is.
Why didn't anybody demonstrate? Why didn't anybody raise a fuss about the destruction that had occurred here? Where are the old growth forests? And you know, over time, I came to realize that if change happens slow enough from one generation to the next, then no one generation recognizes the loss of the previous.
Back in 1989, First Nation and environmental activists banded together to protect old growth just north of Wolf Lake.
The district manager of Temagami gifted this road to the developers.
Hundreds of people were arrested for blockading the Red Squirrel logging road in Temagami,
forcing the government to adopt a whole new look at how we deal or manage resources from a sustainable basis.
The blockade resulted in several provincial parks and conservation reserves protecting old growth.
Red Squirrel Road is a good example of the power of the people, the power of the voice of the First Nations, who were very actively involved in the blockades and just trying to tell people, well, this is our land, basically, and you're stealing from us yet again. You know, to the First Nations, everything was connected. Everything needed to be connected, and it's the same with building a road through a forest. If you disconnect that continuity of that forest, you take away a great part of that spiritual nature of it and the integrity of what's connected that we can't see. And a lot of that forest is connected under our feet.
A place like Wolf Lake is highly valued and really important for the people of Wahnapitei First Nation. A lot of our learning is land-based, and a lot of our place names are land-based. So, you know, if you would speak in Anishinaabe to describe a place, it would describe the place, not just like an arbitrary name, like I'm Stephanie, like that's my name, but it doesn't describe who I am. Whereas in our language, it's very descriptive, and it speaks to the land, because that's the connection was to that part of the land, you know. So with losing places like that, we're losing a part of our language, a part of our identity, and we're unable to carry that forward anymore because it's lost.
In my purism phase, I used to think we need to create these places and no one should ever go in, ever. And I changed, and I changed my mind. I think that places like old growth forests should have trails through them. Those trails should come with rules. Once you have the rules in place and the trail systems in place and the access limited and guided professionally and properly, then no, I don't believe you'll love a place to death. I think people will go as they should go. But if there's no trails, no access, it's just locked off for beauty, well, okay, but then you better hope that every government's good with that. Because otherwise what's going to happen is at some point it's like, well, no one ever goes there. This place over here, we've been saving it for 38 years and no one ever goes there. Yes, we get why we saved it in the first place, but hey, we have a strong argument for mining that valley.
We landed on places like Wolf Lake that end up being called rare when they shouldn't have been. These trees stand as the last sentinels of old-growth red pine ecosystems, containing plants, animals, and human connections that exist in only these areas, which makes them vital to protect, vital to top up their conservational sands.
Don't be afraid to climb trees. Get out there. Voice your opinions. Being arrested isn't so bad.
Whoops, I was muted. There you have it, folks. The Save Wolf Lake film. Congratulations to Red Tent Media, Fran Brand, and Sarah Paul for an amazing amount of work that those two young ladies have done, along with many others along the way. To see this film finally released to the world is an amazing story. So we'll move directly into our panel discussion. Our first panelist tonight, which I'll introduce as a friend and colleague in our efforts to conserve old growth forest. I'm going to read his intro because it is a little bit significant. Anyway, first off, we're going to have Peter Quimby, who is the founder and chair of the board of directors and chief scientist with Ancient Forest Exploration. Dr. Quimby has studied landscape ecology and conservation for the past 4 decades. He's taught at numerous universities, including Wilfrid Laurier and the University of Pittsburgh. He received his master's degree from Yale University and his PhD from the University of Toronto. He was formerly a certified senior ecologist through the Ecological Society of America. Dr. Quimby has published many scientific articles and technical reports addressing the topics of old growth forest and landscape ecology, natural areas management, wildlife habitat assessment, wildlife corridor design, and species at risk. He is the co-author of the book Ontario's Old Growth Forest, now in its 2nd edition, and his work has been cited in nearly 60 different reference journals and many other publications by researchers throughout the world. Let me find Peter. Hello, Peter. Welcome.
Hi, PJ. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you well.
It's very windy here up near North Bay, and my power's been going out on and off today. And so anyway, hopefully that won't happen during my my comments here. But if it does, you'll know why. So thanks, PJ, for the invitation to speak tonight. Your tireless efforts to protect and restore biodiversity and ecological integrity in the Temagami region are very much appreciated. First, I'd like to briefly review the concept of old growth forest, then I'll speak to the values of old growth, and finally I'll comment on the almost completely unused old growth forest policy for Ontario. The old growth forest condition is not an endpoint, but it's a continuum defined by slow ecological change initiated when forestry growth begins to slow down. For example, between 120 and 150 years for eastern white pine. This change in growth happens when a tree starts to allocate more energy to maintaining its increasingly large size, as opposed to using that energy to produce new growth. This point in time is known as the age of onset. Old trees beyond the age of onset are the most important feature of an old growth forest. However, snags or dead standing trees, logs, and integrity, meaning no or little human disturbance, are also important primary characteristics of old growth forests. There are additional secondary and more variable features of old growth that some definitions include, but I'm not going to go into that here. Most old growth characteristics continue to develop for centuries in the absence of catastrophic or human disturbance. However, trees do eventually die from old age, pathogens, severe windstorms, fires, etc. But as long as some of the older trees remain to produce seeds after a natural disturbance, other younger trees will colonize where the older trees died. Some old growth forests support rare, threatened, and endangered plants, animals, and other biodiversity such as fungi and lichens. In most parts of the world, including Ontario's temperate forests, old growth is very rare, yet in Ontario, as in most of the world, there are no laws that protect the remaining rare, threatened, and endangered old-growth forests. Or there are no laws, or the laws that are on the books are not being enforced. In their old growth forest book they published in 2009, Worth et al. State that, quote, in the short term, individual groups and societies might profit from forest destruction. However, with old growth forests vanishing at an unprecedented pace, mankind as a whole loses the ecosystem services provided by these forests, including their spiritual, aesthetic, recreational, educational, scientific, genetic, wildlife habitat, flood and erosion prevention, carbon sequestration, and carbon storage values, just to name a few. Data on old growth forests are generally scarce. So NGOs involved in the protection of old growth or primary forests need fast and efficient survey methods, and given the land use pressure on the remaining areas, they cannot afford to waste time, unquote. In their Living Planet report of 2020, World Wildlife Fund stated that, quote, a different approach to conservation is needed, one that can more effectively address multiple threats to biodiversity and Canada's ecosystems, including the accelerating climate crisis. In a world in crisis, we must reconsider our relationship with nature and invest in solutions that simultaneously tackle the deeply interwoven threats of climate change and biodiversity loss. There's an urgent need for Canada to embrace this opportunity. We have a responsibility to demonstrate global leadership. We can show the world how nature-based climate solutions, like protecting intact nature, can be implemented in a just and equitable way, unquote. Intact or natural forests, such as the Wolf Lake old growth red pine stand, are the most carbon dense and biodiverse terrestrial ecosystems on Earth, according to a 2019 paper published in the Frontiers in Forests and Global Change. Throughout the world, including Ontario, planting trees has been the focus of building carbon stores and increasing sequestration. However, this strategy will not remove sufficient carbon by the end of this decade to significantly reduce global temperature. In contrast, allowing existing intact forests to reach their ecological potential, called proforestation, is a more effective, immediate, and low-cost approach. Ontario's old growth forest policy was initially drafted in 1994 and later completed in 2003. Since that time, however, the policy has been effectively ignored by the government and logging companies throughout the province, despite many attempts to invoke it by conservation groups. With this policy and others, Ontario has the framework to solve our climate and biodiversity crises by protecting all native forests south of the Boreal, including the Wolf Lake pine forest. All that's missing is the will to do so. I fear, however, that until the public puts more pressure on the government, our native old growth forests will continue to be converted to lumber and pulp. Over the last 5 years, the Ontario government has set aside less than 0.01% of Ontario lands for protection, according to the recent Auditor General's report. Less than 12% of Ontario is currently protected. Thus, 21.5 million hectares will need to be added to the protected area system of the province over the next 9 years to meet the federal government's target of protecting 30% of lands and waters by the year 2030. This is a huge lift that won't happen if we continue with business as usual. Thank you.
There I go, muted again. Thank you, Peter, for all your time, work,
did everyone hear that?
We certainly did hear.
When I came back on, I didn't see you. I saw my own face, but I don't know if that means
that's
that
good. I had you in solo mode, so it's good. We all heard it. Thank you, Peter. We will move on to our next guest presenter for tonight, Franco Mariotti, who is a biologist and naturalist His professional career was with Science North in Sudbury, where he worked for 32 years as a staff scientist and a science communicator. He has canoed and hiked the Wolf Lake area for over a 40-year period with his colleagues. He helped to delineate to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forests the old growth red pine forest. Franco has worked tirelessly on the Save Wolf Lake Coalition for close to 20 years now. Just let me bring you up, Franco.
Hello.
I'm going to put you into solo mode. There you go.
Thanks, BJ. So I have 4 quick points that I want to share with people as to why we need to save Wolf Lake. And these are the 4 reasons. There's more, but these are 4 key reasons. First one, from an historical perspective, in the past century and a half, Sudbury has undergone dramatic environmental changes, as you've seen in the video. From an old growth red and white pine ecosystem to an industrial lunar landscape in those 150 years. Fortunately, in the last 40 years, Sudbury has been transformed to a much greener landscape through its success in reducing sulfur emissions and its regreening program. However, if you want to see and experience what Sudbury was like before the industrialization, you need to visit the only place that is a window into that past, and that's Wolf Lake. It's located in the northeast corner of the city's limits, just northeast of Lake Wanapitei. So from an historical perspective, we have a responsibility to protect for millennia the remnant of what once was. 2, from a recreational perspective, Wolf Lake is a canoeist and outdoor enthusiast destination. Considered by some as the Killarney of the North, between 3,000 and 5,000 people visit the area annually, and that number is increasing as Wolf Lake becomes more popular. Current concern that the area has unrestricted camping and is literally being loved to death. Park status will assure proper protection and management of the area. 3, from a cultural perspective, experiencing Wolf Lake raises a quality of life that we now recognize as contributing to our well-being. The area offers a rare opportunity to experience nature in its most natural form. We know that experiences in nature contribute to our mental and physical well-being and inspires creativity. We have a responsibility to those who will come after us to protect Wolf Lake. And 4th, from a biological perspective, Wolf Lake is a national treasure, the largest remaining old-growth red pine forest in all of North America. And that area covers about 1,600 hectares. That's nearly 4,000 acres. And the Wolf Lake Forest is 50% larger than the size of the next biggest red pine forest. So Wolf Lake Forest is really significant. At a time when the very fabric of diversity of life on this planet is threatened, and according to a United Nations report recently, over 1 million species are now on the brink of extinction, and wildlife habitats are shrinking. Places like Wolf Lake have already been identified as a valuable, a natural treasure. It is a park in waiting. Let us save Wolf Lake by adding it to the federal government's goal of protecting 30% of Canada's landscape by 2030. In closing, when we save Wolf Lake, it is a long-term investment for a healthy future, environmentally, economically, and assuring a higher quality of life for all in this part of Northern Ontario. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Franco. As you can well imagine, there is lots of work, time, and energy put into this Save Wolf Lake project. none of us involved with the coalition, nor any of the participants and people along the way we don't claim to have the answers to how we go about um, the use of Wolf Lake and the area around it. We do know that it is being consumed at a rapid pace, not necessarily Wolf Lake, but the area around it. So I'm going to speak a little bit to the recent developments at Wolf Lake, and then we can speak a little bit about what the future holds. So, as you saw in the film, the mining leases were renewed back in 2012, sort of in the background while they were talking about removing the forestry reserve at Wolf Lake. Those mining claims weren't much of a concern because they were held by a company that had been there a number 20 plus years ago. So there wasn't much of a concern. Approximately 18 months ago, and I will add that company that was at Wolf Lake, Red Tent Media tried tirelessly to contact the company to get their perspective on that film. And there was always a number to call, but nobody would answer the phone nor return messages. Anyway, approximately 18 months ago, that company resurfaced. They put in a new application for an exploration permit at Wolf Lake. That was granted by the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Northern Development. Interestingly to note, there were over 500 comments on the application, and most of these mining applications go without notice or any attention. So the idea that there were 500 comments is pretty significant. I will note that lots of those comments were from people that were supportive of the mining and exploration process. So that permit, that application was granted. Just recently, as late as this past fall, that company was taken over by a current company in the Temagami area, and they are at Wolf Lake doing exploratory drill holes as we speak. So that's where we are at currently. There are a couple of points to mention. Our grievance, the grievance at Wolf Lake doesn't come down to that particular company or any particular individual. I think in general, our grievance stands with our inability to protect such fragile ecological special place in the idea that we've taken everything around it. It doesn't stand, we fully acknowledge that the company is there, within their rights, and they own the rights to those leases. And we have, as a coalition, we have been in good communication with that company. They have expressed a desire to do things to the best of their ability. There are some things that we don't necessarily agree upon, but so be it. But they have been in touch with us for the most part in good communication with us. There are also other influences at play with that exploration permit, and we've had some interested parties in joining us this evening. Although it was late, late in the request to join us, we would welcome those participants in this discussion. So there likely will be. We would certainly entertain the idea of having a future online forum on the topic. A big part of where we're at now and what you can do to help out, you can visit the webpage savewolflake.org, which we'll try and put up here momentarily. And you can follow the Take Action link, fill out and sign the letter to an MPP, your MPP, and we try and put the pressure on the politicians to bring about some better understanding and better protection for Wolf Lake. You can also be in touch with us should you be interested in getting involved with the coalition, and we'll try and put that link up as well. I'm going to bring everybody back into the discussion, I hope. Let's see how it goes. Oh, I don't want to be front and center. There we go. We would welcome some questions. I do have a couple of questions here now. Peter, you are muted. I'll just mention. I did cover the bit of the basis as to what you can do to help now. The other question that was posted was whether we were willing to work with the mining company to address this protected area. And I think that that's been answered in the presentation piece. We have tried to work closely with the company that is there currently, and they've been reasonably receptive to hearing our concerns. One of the things that is an issue with me in particular, and I think everybody should be, there was a bit of a mess left 20 plus years ago when they were back there looking. In fact, there's still a fuel drum in the water that, we were assured would be addressed. That is still there. So, when we hear the exploration and the mining companies say, trust us, we're going to do things better this time around, you can forgive us for our skepticism. And you'll have to bear with us with the whole question thing here. Let's see, what have we got next? So the question is, in forestry, a canoe route is granted extra protections as an area of concern. What, if any, do canoe routes have with mining? I don't believe that there are any, there certainly isn't any concept of an area of concern within mining. We can express concerns in the application process, but that is about the extent of it. Wolf Lake is a forest reserve, which protects it from, sort of the forestry issue. I'm not entirely too sure. I believe the forestry reserve is a unique concept in Ontario, and maybe Peter could speak more to that, although I don't know whether any of us really know too much. Do you know, Peter?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a rarely used designation. I think most of the time for an area with those kinds of qualities and of that size, it would, I think normally they're designated as conservation reserves or ANSIs, areas of natural and scientific interest. But in this case, I mean, basically it's a no-brainer as a a simple, easy addition to the Waterway Park. But forest preserves, yeah, they're rarely used, and I really don't know much about them, to be honest. And I've been working on these issues for 30 almost 4 decades. Not necessarily all of my work's been in Ontario, but you would think that, after working for a few decades in Ontario, you would know, if about those. So it's an interesting concept and designation, but they're very rare. Yeah.
It is interesting, and I've only been at this forestry / mining stuff for a short period of time compared to others. But it is interesting. It's certainly unique in the Temagami area for sure. And in case people didn't catch it in the film, we'll just reiterate the idea that the Chinagucci Waterway Park was created back in 1999, and they left a section out of that park that surrounds Wolf Lake in particular. And it was because there were outstanding mining claims there. The idea was that when those mining claims lapsed, the park would be, the area would be included in the park. That's not what happened. The leases were renewed. Those leases are good for 21 years. And so this is where we stand now. We stand with this beautiful Chinagucci Waterway Park with Wolf Lake left out of the center of it. It is worth noting that the Chinagucci Waterway Park is a non-operating park in the Ontario Provincial Park system. Of course, we don't have any official position or comment from Ontario Parks, but as you can well imagine, in this political environment that we're in right now, there is not a big movement to create more provincial park. There is some federal notion of increasing protected areas, but certainly from a provincial standpoint, and from our understanding, there is not any political desire to increase the protected area and the park. Do you have any comment on that, Franca?
For those here in Sudbury who's been involved with the issue for a while, we call Wolf Lake a park in waiting, because when we argued for the forest reserve to become park back in '99, we kind of understood that it was just a matter of time protection would come. And you could see on the map that was shown in the film, and I believe also if you go to the Save Wolf Lake site, Wolf Lake is literally a missing link between the park to the north and the park to the immediate south. It was planned as a park when it was first laid down on the maps, but then that was removed by pressures from MNDM because of mining explorations. So a lot of us, when we argued for this, we literally just sat back thinking, okay, just in a few more years, it will become park. The reverse has happened. We now are fighting to educate people to realize how precious this area is, and our, as you know, mining claims renewed. It makes it tougher as long as the mining claims are there. Let's be clear. Mining exploration does not destroy the ecosystem. It destroyed Wolf Lake, but it is the roadblock from that area becoming a park and protected status. That's why we really would love to see mining exploration leave that area. The 1,600 hectares that make the old growth red and white pine.
Thank you, Franco. And of course, the exploration process, although I'm not terribly familiar with it, but it isn't a significant issue at Wolf Lake. What is more of an issue is how they access those places. There is an old exploration site which is on the west side of the lake. It's an old campsite, although in all honesty, I don't know. I mean, the lake would have to be pretty full before you would stay there. But so that is a current exploration site. There are sites on the east side of the lake that we're not sure as to how they would access that, but it really is that access issue that is of concern. And then, of course, further, if anything significant and there were any future plans to develop anything at Wolf Lake would also be of concern. Let's see. So, Marilyn asked, where are the First Nation voices? You saw Wahnapitae First Nations took part in the film, and they, Stephanie in particular expressed some, at least some concern in general. They are concerned and they are aware of the situation at Wolf Lake currently. They are in their own discussions with the exploration company, and we would be wise to just leave it at that for now. Also, open for a future forum, to have a discussion about those issues and those concerns as well.
PJ, can I just add about open discussions with all the parties concerned? Last year, we reached out to the mining company, to MNDM, to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forests, and requested a sit-down meeting where we would have an open discussion about all the values and all the concerns from all the parties. That was flatly rejected by MNDM, and MNRF they said they would get back to me about a possible meeting, and they never have. So clearly in this democratic society, there are things happening that not all parties of concern are involved with. And it's concerning, especially to us, that it's done this way. We will continue to have open discussions with them. And just before Christmas, with the president of the mining exploration company, we were trying to set a date where we can formally present our concerns to the exploration company and the values of Wolf Lake. We are just waiting for that date, hopefully, to happen. And I would really welcome that to happen. Because, we can only move ahead if all of us at least understand where we're coming from and have open discussions to appreciate each other's values. So I think that's worth saying, and that's why we're here.
Agreed. It is one of the things that I will comment on is that those of us that have been involved with the Save Wolf Lake Coalition have done quite a bit of work to reach out to various parties and to stay in contact and to have open communication with all the parties involved. I will say that in this recent provincial political environment, the ministry's desire to be in touch with groups like the Save Wolf Lake Coalition and the Friends of Temagami and other areas has, been compromised. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's one way, and they've been given the leeway to go ahead and do that. And so I think that that's a big part of how we move forward and we help our voices be heard, is that we take this to a political level and we make our voices heard come the next election. There's a question here for Peter from Ted Mitchell. are you or other experts, I lost it, interested in heading educational canoe trips or online courses to teach about old growth forests?
That's for me.
That is for you.
So I probably need to hear that question again. Like, was there something about an online canoe trip?
Ted's asking if you want to go on a canoe trip. That's basically what it comes down to. No, Ted is Ted is asking if you or any other knowledgeable people in old growth forest ecology are interested in an educational canoe trip or online courses, for example, to share your knowledge with others.
Sure. Yeah, I think maybe the best thing to do would just be to put this person in touch with me through my email. Like Ancient Forest Exploration and Research does a fair bit of work with other organizations, including educational groups. So, and I've taught at universities for 17 years. I have a, I'm interested in education and I enjoy doing it. So, PJ, if you could just, I don't know if you're typing, my email is just pquimby@ancientforest.org. But also, I can people can get in touch with me through ancientforest.org at the contact button. It'll just send them to info@ancientforest.org. So either way, they can get in touch with me, and I look forward to hearing from that person.
Thank you, Peter. We are in touch with Ted. He is a relatively recent new member and director of the Friends of Tomonomy, so we'll get him in touch with you. I'm not entirely too sure. We'll find a good way of sharing some links for those people that are involved in the discussion this evening. We'll figure out a way to get those links to people. It'll likely be in the comment section of the presentation tonight. I do apologize for not having those links handy. This is new to us. So do we have any other questions? Municipal government support. Franco, do you have any comment on that? I know that there's been a little bit of work done there.
So for a few years ago, the city of Sudbury had an advisory committee set up called the Green Space Committee that looked at all of the natural places in the city of Greater Sudbury. And the committee's role was to identify places that needed protection and places that already had protection, but what was the definition? Was it a recreational park or a recreational green space versus a nature reserve? And we created a report about Sudbury's green natural assets, and it was accepted by the council. And in that report, Wolf Lake was recognized as a place to be protected. I guess since the councillors officially accepted the report, in a sense, the city of Sudbury supports it. So that's the best I can say about the city's role in that.
Very good, thank you. I've added a banner, and now
I have a question. I have a question here.
Hello. Go ahead, Peter.
Hello.
Go ahead, Peter.
Franco, what do you think the possibility would be to make the Wolf Lake area a city park?
My honest opinion would be that some of the councillors would have issues, since mining is a big industry here in Sudbury. I think that some would perceive it as going contrary to the mining ideals. So I think it would be a difficult thing to get all of the councillors on board to agree to that. Although you would think that would be one way of circumventing a provincial role, but yeah. I'm trying to be honest. I think that's what you'll find.
Sure.
Just going to scroll through and see if there are any other questions. I do see mention of a national park. Well, you know, it's a pretty lofty goal, and comes with many issues along with it. You know, probably the most significant would be First Nations influence and desire or not on the national park issue. Then you get into landowners, you get into municipalities. It's an interesting and lofty goal, but a possibility. They do come with their issues as well, as we've figured out along the way.
PJ, can I just say that there's some great examples with Parks Canada working together with First Nations and together protecting a landscape and promoting tourism. Haida Gwaii is the classic example, right? On the Queen Charlotte Islands, or what is now Haida Gwaii National Park. If you visit that park, the two operate hand in hand, First Nations and Parks Canada. There's no reason why a Wolf Lake can't be that. However, the same issue arises. Mineral exploration is the stumbling block. That is the roadblock that prevents any further protection. You know, if you just look at the natural values of Wolf Lake, it's a no-brainer. Why isn't it a park? But we know what the stumbling block is, and that's why it's not.
Does anybody know what the potential is for the mining company to actually find a deposit that would be, high enough quality with enough volume to actually exploit?
The company that did the initial exploration for 30 years before this new company took over found absolutely no mineral value. And we even had geologists from NDM tell us that up to that time. And however, this new company is very optimistic that they will find something. And it's possible, but so far there has been no proof. But however, mining exploration depends on investors. And as long as there are investors provide hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to a mining exploration company, mining exploration will continue. So it's, to this point, it has been based on assumption we'll find something. No proof yet.
Yeah. Well, so why do they even bother drilling there? There must be some evidence that there's some minerals there.
So the evidence in our discussions with this current mining exploration company is that the science suggests that there should be good minerals. The discussion has been that there is a dike. And for those who aren't clear what a dike is, it's a crack in the earth where volcanic rock has come up. And the dike that runs supposedly through Wolf Lake, because it's not visible on the surface, the dike that runs through the bottom of Wolf Lake is from the original meteorite impact. And the belief is that valuable minerals have filled in the crack and hence they could tap into those valuable minerals in the dike. That's what they're looking for now. And if they're there, then they can create a mine shaft to get access to those minerals. That's what they're
under the lake.
It's right under Wolf Lake.
Wow.
That's why they're exploring from the shoreline, drilling from either side to get access to that dike. So the science sounds reasonable. Whether the valuable minerals are there, to date we have not. None have been discovered of great value to date.
Very good. Thanks. You, Franco, for that. It is one of the issues that we, that we as a coalition have discussed too, right? I mean, this whole mining industry and the way they do business is a bit of a problem for us. So it would be interesting. It'd be interesting to have a future discussion, a panel discussion, and invite them along to have their say and tell us what their thoughts are on it, for sure.
PJ and Peter, can I just add one thing to this business about exploration and discovering minerals? Even if minerals are discovered, it doesn't mean the end of the Wolf Lake Resort or Park. If the minerals are there, valuable minerals, then mining companies have the technology today, albeit more expensive, to access those minerals from outside the reserve. Yes, it will cost millions more, but there are examples in other parts of Canada where that has been done, and that's a win-win situation. And that's what I would argue. If they do discover minerals, let's not give up the cause of what Wolf Lake is. We can still protect those natural values and insist on mining companies accessing from outside the reserve.
Good to know.
Yeah, there are some very interesting possibilities. It would be, and that's why we all, those of us that are involved, think it's so important that people participate in open and honest, transparent communication. And interestingly, in this example, the company that is invested at Wolf Lake has been far more open to communication than either one of the government ministries, which is a bit disturbing in the sense that that's what they're there to, these ministries are there to, sort of oversee the use and resource management, and they're not so willing to discuss with us. Dale mentions the idea of designating areas as a heritage site. Certainly a possibility, and certainly something that's worth exploring. Although you can well imagine they have troubles making those designations with pretty obvious things. You can well imagine the struggle that there might be in this situation, but certainly something to explore. There's a good question about if Wolf Lake were to join a park status, what would prevent its overuse? Well, we do have an issue at Wolf Lake and the area, and there are many, including us, that are concerned about the overuse of the area. For those that are familiar with the Wolf Lake area, there's a spot called Paradise Lagoon. It is beautiful. If you've not seen it, I would highly recommend seeing it. One of the issues that has arisen with Wolf Lake and Paradise Lagoon and the surrounding area is that it is accessible by road, and people do access the area. That has put a significant pressure on the area and the amount of traffic that it sees and the way in which the area is used. There is garbage left. There is trees that are hacked apart. There's that sort of thing. It is a concern for us as well. One of the interesting things to note is that if Wolf Lake was to be included in the Chinagucci Waterway Park and Ontario Parks was to take over to open it up as an operating park, then it gets overseen just like any other backcountry park in Ontario, which granted, I'm sure that there are those of us that have their concerns about the way that is done as well, but that would be far better than what we are left with at the present state. And I will say, certainly in recent years, and in the last 7-8 years, Ontario Parks has done a pretty phenomenal job with maintaining backcountry parks, given the very limited resources that they have to do so. So it is one of the concerns for us as well. Part of what the Friends of Temagami has taken on, and we are just a volunteer organization. So what we can do, there's limits to what we can do as well. But the promotion of the Wolf Lake area, has come with its toll on the area. And we do, not only the Friends of Temagami, but the coalition and every one of us that goes and uses that area has an onus to look out for it and to, try and keep the place as clean and tidy and well used as we can. Just gonna have a quick look at
PJ. I have a question, PJ.
Yeah, go ahead.
Peter. I guess it was Franco that brought up the information, the facts that was it 3,000 to 5,000 people visited Wolf Lake last year.
Yeah.
That seems like super high. Like where did those numbers come from?
So the figures come from the lodges that are found north of there who take regular clients through, like summer camps, for example, who visit Wolf Lake frequently during the summer. There are a lot of individuals who go there. There are guided trips. I have a close friend who has guided people through Wolf Lake several times during the course of a summer. So all of those cumulatively, that's why the number varies. And there's no question that it's becoming more and more of a destination. Now you can imagine, my wife and I spent the past week trying to book a canoe route in 3 different provincial parks for next summer. It's impossible. It is all booked up right from 5 months before, unless you have some special program that allow you access. So you can imagine with Wolf Lake being unmanaged, not controlled, you could just show up there. There may be other people there. It's most likely there will be, but you could camp anywhere you want. That's why it really be controlled or managed. And the park status really will give that protection and control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, and as people have noted in the chat, we are really, not only Wolf Lake and the Chinagucci area, but across the Temagami region and across the province, I'm sure. The increased use of Ontario parks, number one, and the reservation process, but then by default, the people are being forced to go into areas that are Crown land and whatnot. It is it's good. It's good in many respects for the Temagami area. The more people that go and see and fall in love, but it is one of the issues that we're facing is that much of the Temagami area, and in particular in this case in the Wolf Lake area, is that there is nobody to look out for the area other than those of us that are concerned enough to put in the effort to go and put in a thunderbox or pull out some garbage or that sort of thing. So it is one of the interesting phenomenons that we're seeing with COVID for sure. UNESCO heritage site. There was some work on that a little while ago, wasn't there, Franca?
I'm not familiar with that. That is quite the process and will take many years.
Right.
ultimately, it all comes down to the mining exploration. As long as that exists in that specific area, that will remain a stumbling block.
I wonder if the company would be interested in donating their mining claim after they've done some exploration there. Maybe we can put that forward to them.
Oh, I'm sure they will be.
Okay, everybody. If there are no further questions. Oh, there's Sarah. Hang on. Sarah does speak to the idea that nothing significant had been found there. I will say in our discussions with the current company was that the former company, being Flags Resources, I don't mind saying their name, they had kind of botched the whole record keeping thing, and I think that they were supposed to keep samples and that sort of thing. Apparently that's why they have to redo the exploration process. I'm not so sure about that, but as far as we know, there's not been much significant found there yet. Of course, there are people that are betting the bank on that stuff. I think that if you guys are happy with the discussion, I'm happy to call it a night. And you good, Peter? You good, Franco?
Yep.
Very good. All right, there will be more on this, folks. We'll hold a future forum, and we can invite everybody in good time to partake in the discussion. I want to thank Peter for his time and energy, Franco for his time and energy. It has been a great process leading up to this. Thank you to Red Tent Media, Fran Brand, Sarah Paul. Thank you, everybody. It's been a wonderful evening, and you can find the video on the film on our webpage, on our YouTube page, The Friends of Temagami, or you can send off a request, and we'll happily share it with you. The more people that see this, the better off we are. Take good care, everybody. I hope you stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, BJ, for doing this.
Thanks, BJ.
Good night, everybody.
Hi, Peter.
Bye, Franco.